Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today, boy oh boy, is it horrific. So I'm just going to put in a warning straight away. It's a very disturbing case. It involves neglect, abuse, and it's not even like normally, well, not normally, but a lot of the times these cases are like very young children. This involves a 36-year-old woman who was neglected that much by her parents. It happened this year, in January this year. The press release was done in like April of this year, or like just before April, I think. And that is when everyone found out about it. There's just an outrage going on about it right now. It is the case of Lacey Fletcher. Don't know if anybody knows about it. It was suggested to me by Brittany, so thank you for that. Obviously, if you guys have any more, you can let me know. But honestly, looking into this case, like, I don't really watch the news. I don't, because it's just full of awfulness. It really is. There's not much good in it. And obviously, I do my videos anyway, so I look into cases on the internet and I fill myself up with a lot of true crime in that sense. And obviously, it's an interest for me. And I just don't want to watch the news as well. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't even know that this case existed, to be honest, until it was suggested, and I looked into it and I found it just disgusting, disgracefully disgusting. So yeah, let's actually jump in. Lacey Ellen Fletcher was a 36-year-old woman who was living in Louisiana in a town called Slaughter with her parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher. When she was young, she went to Brown's Baptist Academy in Baton Rouge up until the 9th grade. She was in like the volleyball team, you know. She had friends in school, and her friends would describe her as her mental age was a lot lower than theirs was. If you get, they were a lot more sort of mature, and that's actually because of autism. She also had like severe social anxiety, and when she got to 9th grade, she was pulled out of school, and then that is when her parents decided that they were going to homeschool her. Now, Sheila worked as a police clerk, she was surrounded by police officers, by law, by all of that, like socials, everything. So that was like her initial job, and then after that she was working as an assistant to the city prosecutor. So just think about that a minute, and later on in the case, as we get through it, and the connections that she had in the world, or could have had, and just what happened, because it's honestly mind-boggling. So her father, Clay, was part of like this non-profit. It was a Baton Rouge Civil War roundtable thing where they did this thing for charity about trying to teach people the sacrifices of the sacrifices people made in the Civil War and how it benefits us now and all of that thing, all of those things. They were very upstanding citizens in their town of Slaughter, which I hate that name, and especially the case that comes from it. Just, I don't know. I know it's just a name, but who calls the town Slaughter? It's just weird. I have seen that it was actually named like many years ago, and the people that found it, that was their surname, and that's why they named it. Okay, I get it, but just don't like it, alright? So, like I said, this occurred this year at about 2 a.m. on the 3rd of January 2022. A call was sent into the police by the parents saying that their daughter Lacey had stopped breathing. They thought that she maybe has passed away, and that they obviously needed help. So that is what they go and do. The services head down to the house straight away, thinking that hoping that they are able to revive her and bring her back. She stopped breathing. Let's go down there and let's work on her and see what we can do. So they do. They rush down, and I can't even imagine the thoughts that went through their minds as they just opened the door. That's all they needed to do, because as soon as they opened that door, they were overwhelmed with the smell of feces, urine, and I mean, not even overwhelmed to the point where you think, well, just you can hold your breath and you won't be able to smell it. You couldn't even do that. That is how strong it was. It was disgusting. So they go in and they see Lacey sat on the sofa, and she was sadly deceased. The sight that they were met with was the most horrific sight that probably they have ever seen. And they are paramedics, so they've seen a lot. Just honestly, they literally had to call the coroner. This is how bad it was. They called the coroner and was like, you need to come down here now. So the coroner comes in. He's also met with the foulest smell ever that you just can't get rid of. And then also met with that scene. And the coroner literally said that, bearing in mind, you can imagine the things that he's seen in his life. He's seen all sorts, you know, accidents. Whatever could happen in, like, death. Anything like that. He has seen those bodies. He has worked on those bodies. You know, he's seen a lot in his life. But this sight disturbed him that much that he literally did not eat and cried for a full week straight. So that just goes to show how bad it was. Officials have said that this is one of the worst cases of neglect they have ever seen. And there are some bad ones out there. So they go in and Lacey is sunken in on the sofa. I mean, sunken in on the sofa, you'll know what I mean as we get through it. Her right arm is like over and above her head, and she's sort of slumped over. It's also been said that she was up to her shoulders in the sofa, which I would probably say more like waist. I don't think she was sunk all the way down to her shoulders. Just looking at the picture of the sofa after makes me believe that at the very least. So I could be wrong there, but yeah. She was covered in maggots. She had red blotches all over her face. She had fecal matter pretty much over every inch of her body. Her hair was all matted together with it. They found it in her nostrils, in her ears. Maggots were literally eating her. She, at the time of her death, weighed 69 pounds. And she also tested positive for COVID-19. And that's already horrific enough, but it gets worse because the way in which she was sat, she had her legs like crossed underneath her. So you sat with your legs crossed underneath you, and then she's sunken in on the sofa to the point where it was actually described that she had literally melted into the sofa. And I mean, I believe that her skin was fused with the leather. She'd sat there that long that the sofa had worn away, all of the leather had worn away, the cushion had worn away, and it was just kind of down to that hard, sort of solid bit of wood, like the frame of the sofa, I guess. So she was sat on that, which was essentially her toilet too, because she'd been sat there that long and she used to use it as a toilet. So it was full of feces, it was full of urine. And I guess when they tried to remove her body, that's when they probably realised that her skin was actually fused to it. So they take her body, and obviously the coroner looks into it and tries to perform like an autopsy. He started coming out with the estimations by looking at her body as to how long she's potentially been sat on that sofa. And he came up with 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. So Lacey had been sat on that sofa and not moved for 12 whole years, using it as her toilet, to the point where when they actually looked underneath the sofa, all the wood underneath it had begun giving in and was rotten too. So it had been leaking into the sofa, it eroded all that, it eroded her. She was basically rotting, alive and rotting. And then it had rotted all the way through the sofa and rotted the floor away too. That's just how bad it was. So they believe that she'd been sat there probably since like 2010. And they said that her cause of death was stemmed from like severe neglect. Like she had bone infections, she had like malnutrition, chronic malnutrition, she had been starved, so acute starvation, she had also formation, ulcer formation, and all of that over the years has just basically led to bone infections and sepsis, and eventually all of that together is what killed her. And I mean, she must have suffered so much, Lacey. to be sat in all of that and have your flesh rotting away. I mean, sometimes little things like a cut or even just a splinter or a paper cut can hurt like hell. Can you imagine rotting away in a chair? How much pain she must have been in? It's just unbelievable. Now, I did read that they kind of figured that this was more second degree murder, in the sense when they sort of looked into her stomach contents, because they found feces in her stomach. No, it was all over anyway, it was everywhere. And they also found pieces of the foam from the sofa, so she had been eating the sofa. She must have been that hungry that she was full on eating the sofa. And I know I've seen videos out there of people eating strange things. Some people do eat sofas. I don't think they found anything else in her stomach though. So if she had food in there and then bits of sofa, then you could just say, well, she's just picking it and eating it because she wanted to eat it. But I don't think she had anything else in there. It was just like stomach. It was just like the foam from the sofa. She was obviously malnutritioned as well. So it's just awful. So they began like inspecting things. They were asking neighbours, when was the last time that you saw Lacey, kind of thing. One of them said that they'd seen her 15 years ago, about when she was about 21 years old. She looked like normally thin, just like naturally thin. It wasn't malnutrition. And she was outside, she had little dumbbells and she was exercising and, you know, didn't think much of it. She was happy, she was like a lovely girl. And her friends actually described her again as being such like the sweetest person ever, and she was just so lovely. Well, her friends when she was in school, obviously. And when they were 18 and they were going out partying, because like I said, she had autism, her mind was a lot younger than theirs, so they were going out getting drunk. She was at home watching Disney movies. Do you know what I mean? That's just her sort of mind's age at that point. So she would, and she had severe anxiety, social anxiety, so she would stay at home a lot, you know. This neighbour actually went on to say that they actually asked Cliff about Lexi about 5 years ago. You know, thinking he'd not seen her in such a long time. She must have moved out. She must have got her own, you know, family or whatever, moved into a different home because he's not seen her for that long. So he's like, oh, how's Lacey doing? You know, she moved out, and he's like, no, she still lives here. She's fine. And then changed the subject. And that was that. Now, bearing in mind, her parents as well, like I said, they were seen in the community as really good, respectable people. They went to church every Sunday. And it was also said that the weekend before Lacey died, they had been away for the weekend. So a lot of people have come into question there as to how did Lacey get her own food and water, because she didn't move off that sofa and they weren't there. Whether they put it within reach and she would reach over and grab it, I do not know. But like I said, they didn't find anything in her stomach contents anyway, so I assume not. The human body can last 3 days without water, so did they go away for 2, knowing that she could potentially last 3 before she would die from not getting any water, from dehydration? Who knows at that point? It's also been said that beside her, there were things that could have been used to help her. Like, she had a grey sort of potty, like a potty, I guess, that she could have used to go to the toilet in. There was cotton buds, there was all these different creams, talc, things like that. So I don't know. I think initially her parents were doing everything they could to try and help her, and I don't know, I might be wrong here. This is just what I would hope at the very least. That when they said that Lacey did not want to move, and she decided she was of sound mind, bearing in mind as well. Sound mind. She wanted to sit on that sofa and rot away, and that if she wanted to do that, that was her choice. Honestly. But if that, in the early stages, they were trying to help, trying to clean up the wounds and things like that, I don't know, did they just think, she's never going to move, we're never going to get any help? And once it got to the point where her skin was rotting away, they thought, well, we can't tell anyone now, we're going to get in trouble, so they just didn't. I don't know. I honestly don't know, but there was stuff there that they could have used to help, and I guess they didn't. Sheila said that she used to clean her wounds. She said that Lacey would not leave the sofa, so she would either go to the toilet in the sofa or use a towel on the floor, which if she would do that, why wouldn't she do it in the toilet? I get autism. You know, people with autism can sometimes have like the set ways that they want to do things and they won't do it any other way. I understand that, so maybe that was the case here. And she said that she would often clean the sofa as well, but yeah, it was full of feces, urine, to the point where it had rotted through the entire thing and even into the floor. So don't know how much cleaning she'd done and how much wound cleaning she'd done when Lacey literally, when you could see her bones through the lack of skin because her wounds were that bad. So yeah. Now, it has also been, by the sounds of it, falsely reported that she had Luxin Syndrome. It's not thought that she actually had that. I believe the coroner said that there's no evidence that she ever had that. So I don't know where that came from. If she did have Luxin Syndrome and her parents went away for the weekend, that's even worse because she wouldn't have even been able to move. Luxin Syndrome, you can only like move your eyes. So how would she have gotten herself a drink or food? Like, if they'd have left it around, she could grab it. If she had Luxin Syndrome, she wouldn't have been able to do that. But the coroner is refuting that and said that there's no evidence that she actually had that. So yeah, I just thought I'd put it in because it's in a lot of news articles and it's in a lot of the videos that people have done. But there's also some refuting it now. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know about that. They looked into when the last time that Lacey saw a doctor was, and that was when she was 16 years old, which was 20 years ago. And again, the only diagnosis that he got was like severe social anxiety kind of thing, and obviously she had her autism. Sheila actually said that her autism, I don't know the word, like regressed or got worse essentially when she reached like the age of 14, and that's when she didn't want to go in school. They started homeschooling her. She started not wanting to leave the house and things. I've also read a lot of comments. I am not too clued up on the autism spectrum and things like that, but I've read a lot of comments that said that autism doesn't like regress. It doesn't get worse in that sense. Okay, stress factors can sort of make it a little bit worse, but it doesn't, it's not like a degenerative disease that you gets worse and you get more of. But I'm no expert. I have no idea because I don't really know too much about autism. So yeah, I don't know. That's what they're claiming anyway. That's what the family's claiming, that it got worse. More likely that the autism didn't get worse and that she just got other factors like crippling social anxiety and that fear of like leaving the house. There's an actual word for it, which I don't know. Probably should look that up, but I didn't. Like, where somebody is that terrified to leave the house, they just won't do it. So it probably is more that she got more of that stuff rather than her autism actually getting worse and regressing. Or I might be talking crap. I don't know. I don't know much about it. Just from what I've read and the comments that I've read that people have said. It was also found out that Sheila did actually go to the doctors on sort of Lacey's behalf and ask what she could do if Lacey did not want to leave the sofa. Which to me, again, it seems like she's trying to get help. But then that's where it ends because they didn't. The doctor said, bring her in here to see me. Or see anybody. Or anything. And she never did. Not once. And that was that. Which just infuriates me because they gave them advice. They told them to bring her in. And she didn't. And I understand, like, she's an adult. She can do what she wants. But when your child is literally sat there on the sofa, literally rotting away, like a living corpse, rotting away on the sofa while you're... Oh, bear in mind she had a recliner next to it in the living room. It was in the living room too, so it's not like she's in a room and they forgot about her outside of her mind. In the living room where Sheila used to sit and watch telly next to her daughter that was rotting away and going to the toilet in the sofa. Would you let that happen in a billion years to your child? Because no, I wouldn't. I won't care what it would take. I would ring an ambulance. I would get... And she had connections with the police and everything as well. Probably with social, she had connections too. She needed to get help. And she didn't. She said that Lacey was of sound mind, which I don't believe that she was. Nobody of a sound mind would want to sit in a sofa, use it as a toilet, and then let your flesh all rot away around it. Just nobody. I'm sorry, but no. And she needed to be sectioned if that was the case. You know, if she was suffering from mental health issues that severely, that maybe she needed to be sectioned. Because if somebody wants to make attempts at their own life, say, they get sectioned. So what's the difference here? Like, why did they not try and section her? I would have dragged her off that freaking sofa and dragged her to the hospital myself if it was me personally. I wouldn't care. And I get they're adults, they can do what they want, but there becomes a limit because, again, like if you're trying to self-harm, they would put you in a hospital and try and treat you. So it's just the same thing for me here. It really is. So Sheila and Clay Fletcher were arrested on the 2nd of May in 2020. And again, like I said, when they were arrested is kind of when it all came out, just before that, because this happened months before and nobody knew about it. They took a ton of pictures of just the complete state of what her body was in. Those have not been released to the public. The only picture that's been released is of the sofa once her body was removed. And I personally don't think they ever will release them to the public. What they have done though, why we know so many details about the condition of her body, was that they were so severe that they actually took them to the press. And the press weren't allowed to publicate them, obviously, but they were allowed to describe what they were seeing. So there's like massive descriptions of all of what was wrong with Lacey's body. And it horrified them. They went to trial. The pictures were shown to the jury, which had medical staff on standby because they were horrifying, and something might happen to the jury because they were that horrifying. The jury was just in complete shock at what they were looking at. People were gasping, people was just jaw slacked. Some were just staring off, thinking God knows what they were thinking at that point, just utter shock. So they were taken into custody. The parents claimed that, you know, Lacey was of sound mind, as I've said. She never complained of a sore, she never complained of being in pain, she never complained of anything. That she refused to leave the sofa, so they would bring her meals, they would clean her up, and that was that. She also said that her daughter had never seen a doctor in the past decade because she was never sick. Okay then. Basically, they were taken into custody, remanded into custody or whatever, and a bond was put up for them. $300,000 each. Sheila paid hers. She was out. And then the very next day, Clay paid his. And he was out. So basically, they're out and about, walking around, waiting for the trial to commence. They have released a statement through their lawyer, which just made me pretty angry, to be honest, because personally, I've never been in the situation where I've lost a child, but I know that there are so many people that have. And they released that they didn't want to relive the pain of losing their child through the media, and that anybody that has ever lost a child before knows exactly what it's like. I'm sorry, somebody's child who has passed away for some reason or another, you know, illness, taken by some evil monster, like murdered, anything, in any way, and then they're trying to compare it to that. Like, are you actually being serious? You have sat next to your daughter and let her physically rot away for years, and you're trying to compare that with somebody who has lost their child by, I don't know, any means. It's not comparable, and it just really, really made me mad that they even had the audacity to do that. And I assume that there are so many parents out there who have lost their children and who have been in that situation who are so mad at that statement, because I was. So that's kind of it, really, in the sense of we're now waiting for the trial. It's estimated that maybe it will happen October, September this year. Honestly, I really hope they go down for this, because in my eyes at least, they have neglected their child. She was a 36-year-old woman, and they left her to rot for years. to the point where she's fused to the sofa that she was sat in. I'm sorry, but they needed to get her some help. If they couldn't deal with it themselves, even if the option was to put her in a care home, which nobody wants to do, but there sometimes comes a point where you have to do. You have to do things like that for their own benefit. And certainly Lacey would have been way happier there because she wouldn't have been in agonizing pain. So seriously, I really don't know. As I've already said, I would really like to hope that these parents really did try in the beginning. Because, you know, they went to the doctors, they had all this stuff for her. But then, when did it get to the point where they just gave up? Like, seriously, I would have been calling anyone, telling them that they needed to come in, telling them, you know, some people, even if they don't self-harm, some people need to be sectioned or something because of their mental stability. And it's sad, but it happens. And I honestly think that that was the case with Lacey. Like I said, there's a lot of people that don't want to leave the house, that have crippling social anxiety and do not want to leave the house, but they don't just sit on the sofa. That's just not what happens. Honestly, this case is beyond heartbreaking. Lacey deserved better. Lacey deserved better from her parents, and they didn't give it to her. And it's infuriating. So now we've got to wait for the trial, see what happens with that. I might do an update video when it comes out. I don't actually know. We'll see. We'll see, because sometimes I don't like making videos just for the sake of making videos, like a couple of minutes long or whatever, just as like an update. So maybe it'll be a pinned comment. If more information comes out and the trial's massive or whatever, then maybe I'll do an update. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, this case has been a real hard one. There's a lot of triggers in it, a lot of warnings, which I haven't really mentioned. I just guess we've got to wait and see. I'd love to know what your opinions are on it. Yeah, I'm just a bit lost for words on this one. I really am. You just wouldn't think that. I mean, of all the horrific things that happen in the world, you'd never ever think that, you know, the neighbours of them people, that was happening just literally behind their door. And they were asking about the daughter, and she's literally just sat on the sofa forever until she died. I mean, I'm just keep rehashing stuff at this point, so I'm just going to stop. But as you can tell, this case is just so frustrating, honestly. So yeah, that is the end of it. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for some more content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of Lacey Fletcher. Thank you so much for watching, if I can actually speak. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.